This is the Atari 8-bit podcast.
I got a lot of interesting feedback. One of the comments that I got back from people was it was too difficult.
This is an interview episode of Antic, the Atari 8-bit podcast. I'm Kevin Savitz. Glen Faden published one program for the Atari 8-bit computers, Microsailing, which was published by Atari Program Exchange. Microsailing first appeared in the spring 1983 APX catalog. I'm going to read its entry for you. Microsailing, recommended for ages 8 and up, written in BASIC and machine language. Sail through 4 courses that teach tacking and jibing, 1 or 2 players. The saying goes that you'll love sailing if you enjoy standing in a cold shower dropping $100 bills down the drain. Microsailing can't replace the thrill of gliding through the water on a brisk sunny day, but it does give you a taste of the skill required to sail a yacht without the heavy financial investment or the uncomfortable conditions that can dampen your pleasure. This yacht racing game for 1 or 2 players offers 4 courses of varying difficulty. A yacht runs through the course before the race to show you how to round the marks. You tack and jibe around the buoys on a course using a joystick controller as your tiller. Your speed depends on both your helmsmanship and wind conditions. Experienced sailors can even elect to sail in stormy weather. The game offers 2 sets of rules. Standard rules ignore boat collisions, whereas advanced play follows the right-of-way rules of the North American Yacht Racing Union. The race ends when 1 player crosses the finish line after rounding all the marks. The program displays the best time for all the races and also shows which player has achieved the best time. Microsailing is the perfect way to prepare for your next regatta. The author invites questions and comments by mail and telephone. Review comments. This is an enjoyable simulation of a sailing race, and the computer is a tough competitor. The user manual is very good. It contains diagrams of the 4 courses. Requires Atari Basic Language cartridge, 1 Atari joystick controller per player. Order information. It was available on diskette, required 32K, and cost $17.95. The APX catalog number was 20176. This interview took place on January 27, 2016.
I'm a software engineer since I lived in Florida at the time, but I went to Florida Institute of Technology and I had a master's degree in software engineering. And I worked at the time for a company, Gould Computers in Fort Lauderdale, and I bought the Atari 800 when it came out because I wanted to have a home computer. And I had been sailing all my life. I was captain of the sailing team at Albany State, New York, and I have been doing sailboat racing since I was a kid. So it seemed a natural opportunity to program something for the Atari, and the Atari Program Exchange had been announced, and it seemed like as a programmer I could effectively create a business and write off the cost of the computer, which I did.
Awesome.
I remember at the time trying to. I moved shortly after that. I had moved to Santa Clara, and I was near the Atari headquarters and talked to people at Atari in terms of getting the program accepted into the exchange. I got a lot of interesting feedback. One of the comments that I got back from people was it was too difficult, which was kind of funny because the way it worked was that it was effectively playing against me in that I had recorded my coordinates in a file when I was playing the game, and so when people were playing, they were playing against me, even though when they said player versus computer. Mm-hmm. And some people thought it was very useful. I also got a bunch of recognition from various organizations that I didn't expect. For example, way back then, the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia had an exhibit of hands-on computers, and the microsailing was one of the programs that they were showing, and people were trying it out. And even Club Med had at the time a kids camp in Mexico somewhere where they had Atari computers, and they also were showing microsailing, and I had to fill out forms granting them permission to use it as a license and so on. And I had a number of other people in various sailing organizations that gave me feedback that they were using it. So it had a reasonable amount of success in the context that it was part of the Atari Program Exchange.
Nice. Do you have any idea how many sold? I know you got some.
I can't really remember. I think my royalties at the time went up to about maybe $7,000 to $10,000. I don't really remember the exact number anymore.
Nice, but certainly enough to pay you back for the computer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was worth it to me to do the effort.
So it sounds like, I don't want to misrepresent you. You were into sailing. You got the computer in order to make a sailing game. You made a sailing game, and then you never did any other programs.
Well, I'm a software engineer now. I work for Oracle, and I worked on Microsystems before that, and so I've been doing programming for over 40 years.
Sure.
And I didn't do any other games, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I meant any other Atari programs that you published, but you're right.
No.
Did you do other projects that weren't published?
No, this was just for my own purposes I did.
Sure.
I mean, I have written games for a lot of computers when I was younger. I wrote a chess game, for example, a 3D tic-tac-toe game, a lot of things like that. But not on the Atari. At the time, I had a kind of a view that BASIC wasn't a real computer language, and I did a little bit of 6502 assembler, but I didn't really want to get into that either. So I tried to do a sufficient amount of programming to get this thing to work. It's interesting that over time, the Atari emulators started appearing on a bunch of different types of computers, and so the microsailing application effectively still is running on a bunch of emulators.
Yeah,
I've seen that running and people every once in a while contact me that they want to make sure it's okay to run it on their emulator, which I always say it is okay, but it's a long time ago, and I'm not expecting any money or anything.
You said the game people complained it was too hard. Do you think it was too hard because you were a sailor and you made the game hard because sailing is hard?
I think the thing is that I wanted to do it with as cleanly as possible. In other words, not make any mistakes. So yes, I think it was the fact that I, first of all, am a sailor, and secondly, I understood the algorithms that the program was using to get optimal speed and so on. Mm-hmm. So I took advantage of my personal knowledge to create a kind of a difficult sample to play against, but it had various options, and it had player versus player and player versus computer, and so people who played against each other had probably more fun than playing against the computer because the computer played too hard.
Right.
And at the time, I didn't think about, I think I recall I did have a few options of whether the rules were strictly enforced or not. For example, if you violated a rule, how much of a time penalty you had. I also got feedback from my friends who were real sailors and real computer people that it was not sophisticated enough in that, for example, it didn't have a true 3D perspective, which was hard to do in BASIC at that time. And it didn't exactly follow real sailing, because in real sailing you're not supposed to hit the mark when you go around it. You're supposed to avoid hitting the mark.
Right.
That didn't really work very well from a programming standpoint, so hitting the mark was a more natural thing to do in a game.
Sure. And I was
But
looking. Go ahead.
it was a fun thing. I mean, I did it as a lark, really. I didn't. It wasn't my career. It was a part-time thing that I was doing, and I was pleased at the amount of recognition I got. Even today, after all these years, that people still remember it. That's cool.
Nice. Yeah, it's a fun game and kind of something unique in the APX catalog for sure.
Yep.
And I saw your Twitter. Your Twitter shows pictures of you still sailing today.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I'm still sailing. I was just I had a vacation in Jamaica 2 weeks ago, and I was sailing in there. So yeah, and the sailing's part of what we do. My brother and I, for example, have sailboats and still are participating. And I have a sailing game on my iPhone that I use. So I'm still interested in that.
Nice. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I think that's probably interesting enough. I covered enough stuff.
All right. Great. I guess that's it. Thank you so much, Glenn. I appreciate your time.
Okay, you're welcome.
If you enjoyed these interviews and would like to contribute something, I encourage you instead to donate to one of our favorite organizations, the Internet Archive, at archive.org. The Internet Archive is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They've done incredible things to preserve computer history, including hosting thousands of programs in an in-browser Atari emulator, creating the Wayback Machine, and offering full-page scans of countless Atari computer books and magazines. Make your tax-deductible contribution at archive.org/donate.